The city shimmered under a blanket of artificial light, skyscrapers piercing the night sky as if competing for dominance, and Alexander Grant's building was among the tallest, a symbol of his rise from nothing to one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the city. At 42, Alex had built an empire of technology and innovation, his name etched into the skyline, yet tonight, all he wanted was silence. The gala dinner he had attended hours earlier had been unbearable, filled with handshakes that meant little and conversations that circled endlessly around profit margins, mergers, and fake laughter. He left earlier than expected, his black limousine gliding through the near-empty streets until it came to a halt in front of Grant Enterprises. His chauffeur raised an eyebrow, surprised, but Alex waved him off. "Forgot an important file," he muttered, though in truth, part of him simply wanted to walk the halls of the company he had built from scratch, away from the pretense of the rich and powerful. The lobby was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights, and the security guard, half asleep at his desk, nearly jumped when Alex appeared. "Working late, Mr. Grant?" the guard asked nervously. "Something like that," Alex replied with a thin smile before stepping into the elevator. The ride to the 30th floor was unusually heavy, his reflection in the polished steel doors staring back at him with weary eyes. When the doors slid open, a faint glow caught his attention, the light in his office was still on. He frowned, instantly alert. He was meticulous about such things, no one had reason to be there after hours. His footsteps echoed on the glossy floor as he moved toward the end of the corridor, every instinct telling him something was wrong. His hand hesitated on the brass handle of his office door, heart thudding with anticipation, the silence pressing in like a physical weight. Slowly, he pushed it open, and what he saw inside rooted him to the spot. The imposing room, usually pristine and orderly, now had an unexpected occupant, someone who had no right to be there, someone who would change the course of his life in ways he could never have imagined. For a long moment Alexander stood frozen, the sight before him refusing to align with the order and discipline he demanded of his world, because crouched in the corner of his luxurious office was a young woman, no older than her early 20s, her thin frame wrapped in a threadbare sweater that looked 2 sizes too large, her knees drawn to her chest as she clutched a worn backpack like a shield, and when their eyes met, hers were wide with fear, shimmering in the harsh office light like those of an animal trapped and ready to bolt. Alex's first instinct was outrage, a surge of anger at the audacity of anyone daring to invade his private sanctuary, his fortress of glass and steel built on relentless sacrifice and precision, and his voice cut through the silence, low and demanding, "Who are you, and what the hell are you doing in my office?" The girl flinched, her lips trembling, and for a moment Alex thought she might cry, but instead she whispered in a voice so fragile it barely carried across the room, "Please, don't call the police. I didn't take anything. I just needed somewhere safe." Her words hung in the air, thin yet heavy, and Alex found himself studying her instead of barking for security, noticing the dirt smudged on her cheeks, the hollowness in her eyes that spoke of exhaustion, the way her fingers shook not from guilt but from cold and hunger. He should have been furious, should have picked up the phone and ended this intrusion with one call, yet something in her desperation tugged at a part of him long buried under years of hardened success. He stepped further into the room, the polished floor gleaming beneath his shoes, and she shrank back, clutching her bag tighter as if bracing for punishment. "You broke into my company's headquarters," he said evenly, though the edge in his tone softened almost against his will. "That's not something you can explain away with a few words." She swallowed hard, her voice shaking as she replied, "I didn't mean to break in. I saw the stairwell door propped open, and I couldn't sleep on the street again tonight." For reasons he couldn't yet understand, Alex didn't raise his voice, didn't summon help, he simply stood there, torn between the businessman who demanded order and the man who could not ignore the quiet plea in a stranger's eyes. The silence stretched between them until Alexander finally lowered himself into the leather chair behind his desk, his gaze never leaving the trembling girl who still clung to her backpack as if it contained the last threads of her existence, and with a sigh that betrayed more weariness than anger he said, "If you expect me not to call the police, then you'd better start talking." She hesitated, her lips parting and closing again, as though words themselves were too heavy to lift, but at last she whispered, "My name is Emily." I didn't come here to steal. I just needed somewhere I could close my eyes without being afraid. She spoke haltingly, every syllable etched with shame, and as the story spilled out, Alexander found himself leaning forward, listening in spite of himself. Emily had once been a college student with dreams of becoming a fashion designer, the kind of girl who sketched dresses in the margins of her notebooks and believed the future was wide open, until her mother fell ill and medical bills swallowed everything. Scholarships weren't enough, part-time jobs slipped through her fingers when she could no longer balance work and caregiving, and when her mother passed away, debt collectors came faster than condolences, leaving her homeless and adrift. She described nights in bus stations where every sound felt like a threat, days where hunger gnawed until she could barely think, and how she stumbled upon the service stairwell at Grant Enterprises left ajar, a stroke of luck she clung to because the building looked safe, because the office she crept into seemed warm, because she had run out of places to run. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she added, "I wasn't trying to invade your world. I wanted to feel safe, even for a night." Alex sat back, stunned into silence, the walls of his office suddenly feeling too tall, too sterile, as her words peeled back layers of his own memories, days when he too had gone without, when he had worked 3 jobs just to scrape together tuition, when he had promised himself he would never again know the taste of desperation. He saw in Emily not just a trespasser but a mirror of the person he used to be, and though he would not admit it aloud, her story unsettled him in a way that boardroom battles and billion-dollar deals never could. The first light of dawn crept across the skyline, painting the glass towers in soft gold as Alexander sat in his office, still listening to the quiet breaths of the girl across from him, and for the first time in years he felt the weight of a decision that had nothing to do with stock prices, contracts, or market shares but with the fragile life trembling before him. He could have called security hours ago, could have ended this intrusion with a single word, yet something deep inside him refused to push her back out into the unforgiving streets. Instead, he poured 2 cups of coffee from the machine in the corner and slid one across the desk toward her, the simple gesture causing Emily's eyes to widen as though kindness itself was a foreign language. "You can't stay here," he said firmly, though his voice lacked the cold edge it usually carried, "but I won't throw you back outside with nothing. If you're willing to work, to prove yourself, I'll give you a chance." She blinked in disbelief, as if waiting for the cruel twist of a joke, then clutched the cup with trembling hands, whispering, "You mean, a job?" He nodded, surprising even himself with the certainty in his tone, because something in her story had stirred memories of his own rise, of the nights he had slept in borrowed spaces, of the times when all he had was a dream and the determination not to let it die. "I don't believe in handouts," he added, "but I do believe in second chances. You'll start small, basic work around the company. If you prove you're serious, then we'll talk about more." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as a shaky smile broke across her face. The first true smile he had seen from her since the moment he opened the door, and in that moment, Alexander knew this was no accident, no random intrusion. It was a reminder that behind every fortune lies a story of struggle, and sometimes the universe sends someone to remind you of the fight that made you who you are. As the sun climbed higher, Emily stood, her posture no longer shrinking with fear but lifted by fragile hope, and Alexander realized that his office, once a place of power and solitude, had just become the place where both their lives changed forever.